Hello, this is a guy on wormhole control, and it's pretty useful to know what I'm gonna tell you about if you're just now entering wormholes, or if you just want a small refresher. Essentially, let's start off with our wormhole, and let's make it green, right? This is our wormhole. Let's name it H. Our wormhole is a C4 because that's usually what they are, unless you're in lines. And that's C6. We'll talk about that later. So every hole has a static, and those statics can be C1s, C2s, C3s, C4s, C5s, I believe C6 too, if that's a thing. Oh, yeah, it is a thing. Shattered hole, high sec, low sec, or null sec. And very rarely Triglavian space. In fact, I don't think I've ever seen one, but yeah. So let's say our home hole has a C3 static. And then, just to make it easier, let's draw much more holes. These are random holes in the new Eden, right? And we'll name them. There you go. C1, C2, another C1, Jita, for example, C6, and then C4. So let's make this a C1 static. What this static is gonna do is you will always have a static connection to a C1 wormhole. For example, this one. But it can also be this one. It's completely random, but it's guaranteed that it will be a C1 wormhole. So you're not gonna get a C6 wormhole out of this static. Unless something happens, which is, you're gonna talk about it. So this C1 might have a high sec static, which is very common. A lot of C1s have a high sec static. What that high sec static is gonna do is it's gonna create a static to Jita, for example, but it can be any high sec New Eden. I don't think high secs have any wormhole static wormholes. So yeah, you gotta really scout high secs if you wanna find a specific wormhole. But C6, for example, might have a C3 static. Oh, well, let's make it C3. Okay, C3. C3. And then there. That C3 static might have a static to a C4. And that'll lead to us. And now, on this side, we will have a wormhole connecting to a C3. It's not our static, but it's a C3 static. On this side, what you would call that is a wandering hole, meaning that a random hole in the New Eden has connected to you. Unless you want to explore it, or like, if you just don't care, you can just ignore it. Just let that hole be there. Nothing bad will happen. Well, something bad will probably happen at some point, but yeah. Now you have an access to this chain. And this C6 might actually also have a static for a C1. Now, what does that mean? That means that it might also connect to this or that. So as you see, just by having one static, you already basically connected to the whole of New Eden. You connect to high secs. Can also be connected to low secs. For example, if this was a low sec static too. Let's make a low sec this and let's make it ignition, for example. I'm not gonna write that, but low sec. And there you go. Now your hole is accessible to anyone if they find the right path. Like, it can be any path. What hole control is, which is the topic of this video, is trying to limit the amount of people or the amount of entrances into your hole and having control of it. How you would do that is, first of all, rolling off these connections. You don't want wandering holes to be coming to your hole, right? Because if it's a C6, for example, that's a location where a huge majority of the alliance holes, or like big alliances, live. They also live in C5s, and most of the corporations live in C4s. But yeah, these usually mean trouble. Like, if you get a big corporation one connection away from you, they're probably going to find you and look for content. So you roll these off. What rolling off a hole means is you pass a lot of mass through it. For example, there are ships that can weigh like 100,000 tons, and you pass it to this connection multiple times. And there is a way to pass through them, and it's called cold and hot. Those are two different ways. When you pass through a connection hot, you pass or like jump through the hole while your propulsion module is on. That makes your ship weigh more. And it varies from module to module and from ship to ship. But typically, it just makes your ship weigh more. And when you do it cold, your ship weighs the normal amount. So, yeah. There's actually a lot of guides on this. You should probably look into that if you're interested. But I'm not going to explain it because I actually have little experience in that myself. So right, let's say that you roll this hole off. Now you have no connection to the C3. But you still have this static. What you can do is also roll it off. Like, typically you would have only one connection, right? But this was just to explain that you can have a static to this C1 or that C1 or any other C1. So let's say you rolled it off. Well, you might say, but there'll be just another C1 connection, right? Like, as soon as you roll this hole off, a new signature will pop in your hole. But the thing is that hole will not open unless you scan it. I believe it's like 75%, meaning that if you scan a wormhole, or like if you scan a signature above 75%, it's gonna open, and that connection is gonna form between you and that other hole that you have the static to. So typically, once you close the hole, you want to tell your members or tell your teammates to not scan, because if they do scan a signature like a wormhole, it will open and people will be able to come into your hole and possibly kill your whole mining fleet, which has happened to me. A cool thing to do, right? If you're, for example, ratting and you have a C1 static and you want to rat C1s, you open your static, you go into this hole that just opened, and you just farm it. You run all the combat sites you wish, mine it, gas off it, and that's it. Once the C1 is empty, roll it off. Simple as that. Takes like 10 minutes, and boom, you have another connection. And mine this half the gas, run the combat sites, boom, pull it off, and get into another C1. 10 missions, for example, that's already about 100 million. Gas sites, they're like 100 million each site. Probably more if you get lucky. Ore sites, pretty expensive too. No idea how much they are worth because I don't really do them. And boom, every hole typically has like a billion or two in it, but that's just the C1s. C4s can have multiple billions, and so can C3s. So, yeah. Um, these connections can also vary. Every connection has a size, and a thing to note about this is that C1s can only have medium ships come into it and out, meaning every one of these connections is medium, meaning something like a battleship will not be able to go through it, while something like a cruiser or a destroyer will be able to go pretty easily. Uh, if it's a C2 or a C3 or anything above, it will almost always be large or extra large. And shattered holes, which is a hole that has its J number start with like 0, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Those have a lot of ice in it and a lot of mining sites, and they always have uh, frigate holes, like frigate connections. Sorry. Right. So this will have a frigate connection, meaning only frigates can pass through it. So something like a destroyer will not be able to go through it, but a heron will be able to, and a buzzard will be too. Like it doesn't matter if it's a Tech 2 or not, right? It's just a size. So these connections will always be end of life, I believe. I'd never encountered one that was stable. So as soon as it spawns, for example, I believe it can be any hole. So like if it spawns in C6, right? This connection will already be end of life. EOL. That means that the hole will decompose or close within the next 4 hours. Well, usually almost exactly 4 hours after it forms. So once you go in it, if you want to come out, you have to do it within 4 hours. Or also, hole just closes on you, and you will have to find another way out. Which typically isn't hard unless there's someone in the hole with you trying to hunt you. So, yeah. I believe that's it for wormhole controlling. You can rewatch it. You can slow the video down as much as you wish. I have a referral link in the description. If you're a new player or a returning player, you can use it if you haven't already. Gives you 1 million skill points. But yeah, have a good day. Goodbye.